And as I made another sharp turn, all of a sudden I felt a trunk or something grabbing me by the ankle, and I was in there. It's the trunk of the elephant reached for me. I was in there, and yeah, I was just flying in there.
Welcome back to When It Hits the Fan, the podcast that delves into what really happens when things go wrong on the road. Brought to you by Battleface, the tough face of travel insurance. Now, being a podcast focused on high-risk travel, it's understandable that our guests come from a range of backgrounds: journalistic, humanitarian, and of course, plain old adventuring. Today's guest, though, has had a career which has perhaps encompassed all three of those areas. Henry Gold is a founding member of the Canadian Physicians for Aid and Relief, a development organization that operates across many African countries, providing a range of programs, including emergency relief, infrastructure building, and reforestation. During his time managing the organization, he also produced a trilogy of award-winning films about foreign aid, development, and health issues across the African continent. In 2003, Henry founded the Tour d'Afrique, a 120-day bicycle expedition from Cairo in Egypt to Cape Town in South Africa, which saw 33 cyclists set off from the pyramids of Giza, spending 4 months on the road before finally completing their journeys at the foot of Table Mountain. In recent years, meanwhile, the Tour d'Afrique has morphed into TDA Global Cycling, a company owned and operated by Henry, which offers cycling expeditions across the globe. Of course, with a life that varied, Henry has plenty of tales of adventures, and we have plenty more guests lined up for the podcast. If you're not subscribed yet, do that now to be kept up to date on the latest episodes. And of course, we'd love a positive review on whichever platform you're using to listen to or watch this podcast. But that's enough from me. Let's hear from Henry himself. Henry, great to finally speak to you and get you on the podcast. How are you?
Pleasure. I'm fine overall, dealing with it like everybody else with what's going on, but managing.
Yeah, I've just read that because I should say you're in Toronto at the moment, and you've had one of the longest lockdowns, right, in Toronto. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, they have, but it wasn't. I certainly didn't find it particularly difficult because it's not like we had a curfew or we had police policing us doing whatever. I mean, you could walk around, you could cycle, you could you could go on shop. So certainly, I didn't feel it particularly stressful.
You mentioned cycling, which of course is a kind of almost in a way perfect lockdown activity if you are allowed your daily exercise and to kind of get out of the house. Kind of a relatively kind of solitary exercise like that is actually a great way to spend lockdown. So I'm wondering if this is how you spent your lockdown. Were you on your bike at all?
I was on my bike, but I wasn't very much on a bike as compared to what I used to in the past. I spent more time walking, believe it or not, just going for long walks, different parts of the city. I just gave myself some goals to go see places I haven't seen, just to get to know the city.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you're here to tell us about an incident that happened. Well, of course, it was on a cycling expedition. Do you want to give us some context then, Henry? Whereabouts in the world was this, and when did this take place?
So just to give you even more background, basically, in 2002, myself and other fellows set up this company called Tour d'Afrique Limited, which was the idea was simply to cycle from Cairo to Cape Town. It was never done before, certainly not in a big group. And we did this in 120 days, established a Guinness World Record. And then at the end of it, the discussion started, is this it? Is this one of a kind? Or are we going to continue? And then I decided anyway, that we're going to continue and we're going to try to add different type of trips around the world. And so we started other trips, Silk Route and South American epic and trips like this. And then in literally in 2011, for the first time, we decided to do an Indian trip, which was started in Agra, literally the Taj Mahal. And the idea was to cross all the way to the southernmost part of India, which is Kanyakumari. The way we cycle, the style we cycle is we don't necessarily cycle as a group. We cycle individually, everybody gets direction every day, and then people spread. So that's how the fast cyclists can go as fast as they want, and the slow cyclists like myself can go as slow as they want, and stop and chat and do whatever you want.
What sort of distance are we talking about here?
I'll be talking about anywhere from 80, 90 kilometers per day to as much as 150 kilometers, even 160 kilometers. It all depended on how you break the tour, because a tour like this, we break it into segments, roughly 2 weeks, and so that people can also join for these segments. And the segments are set up in such a way that you can fly in and out. There's at least a major airport. So if you're coming from outside, you can fly in, and the next segment you finish, you can fly out.
And how far into this this journey or this expedition did this incident take place?
So we were towards the end. I think it was an 8-week trip, so I recall correctly. And we were into the last 10 days already towards the south. We were in a city called Mysore, which is a little south of Bangalore. Bangalore is quite famous nowadays for the high-tech cities. Sure. Mysore is also a big city, over 1 million people, maybe 2. I don't even remember anymore. We had a rest day there. We got off and we cycled about 100, 120 Ks, and it became it started becoming wilder. We actually cycled through a national park where we were told that there's elephants and be careful. So that's we actually had to pull into 2 or 3 groups. So we didn't cycle by ourselves. And we passed very successfully, no problem. We saw elephant. They didn't bother us. We enjoyed ourselves. So I had my breakfast, put my stuff in the vehicles. The vehicles were packed. And there was one young lady who was actually with me on a trip before in Africa from US. And she was having some difficulties with her bicycle. So I was hanging around helping her. And about 20 minutes after everybody left, it was just me and her, and we departed. We managed to fix whatever the problem was, and we departed. And started kind of from the lodge heading to the main road, which was a little bit back towards the little town. And then we made a right turn, and we were on a very narrow, but paved road, Indian standards, which is kind of interesting because again, it's sort of pertinent a little bit in a few minutes. I'll tell you about why. But it's when I say Indian road, it's essentially at most lane and a half road at most. But the most interesting thing is they lay it heavily with asphalt, so that the shoulders are almost 6 inches, so you kind of really drop if you go off the pavement. So anyway, we were cycling now. I was kind of hanging back behind him, maybe 20, 25, 30 yards. She's a much stronger cyclist than me. In general, we were going up the hill. Again, not a very steep hill, but nevertheless, it was 5-6 degrees climbing, with someone like me who as I said, not particularly strong cyclist and upright cyclist. So there we go. We were not, 5, 6, 7 kilometers from the lodge at this point, going uphill, and all of a sudden, ahead of us, I would say 100 yards ahead of us, there was an elephant with 2 young ones crossing, just appeared in front of us, and then it's just very peacefully crossed. and it was very exciting, particularly because the young lady who was with me in Africa before was the only one from all of us who never saw an elephant in Namibia and Botswana as we were cycling. So she was very disappointed. You know how everybody talks about, did you see it? Did you see it? And she didn't. So I thought, well, there you go. You had to come all the way to India. Now you're saying, well, the elephant, how nice. So that was kind of a warm feeling. And at the same time, a car passed by us, and I was more focused on the elephant, looking. I didn't pay much attention to the car. But the car, as they reached the elephant, honked at the elephant. And again, there was nothing unusual. It wasn't like very strong, but it was kind of a, honking that you do, and went on. And I sort of made the point to myself at that point, just trying to remember roughly ahead of me where the elephants walked into the forest, because I thought when I get to that particular spot, yeah, I'm going to try to get a glimpse again. It's always nice to observe wildlife. And I thought, well, I'll just try to see if I can catch a glimpse. So continued cycling up the hill, so fairly slowly. And then when I reached the point where I thought I made a mark in my mind, I sort of said, well, the elephants are not here. They are deep in a forest, or I have already passed the spot, and that's it. And literally, as that thought crossed my mind, out of my, to the left where I was looking for an elephant was running, charging, just broke through the trees, charging full speed. Well, he was running, or he or she was running full speed at me, literally at me. And as I said, at that point, it was maybe 10 yards when I spotted, maybe maximum, you never know these things, maybe 15 yards.
Yeah.
And well, at that point, I had to start making some decisions. What am I going to do? Your mind takes over very quickly. It's survival instinct. So my quick thought was, I'm not going to get away going uphill. So let's see if I can turn quickly and go downhill, because then I have the gravity working with me. I can 2-3 quick pushes, and I have a good speed. But then, as I said, this road was narrow, and I knew that the shoulder was high, so I had to make a very sharp turn. And I tried, and of course I fell. At which point, you start again. Your mind works very, very quickly. It's not like you can say, "Can I do this? Can I do that?" The mind tells you do this. And in my case, the mind said, "You got to get yourself into the forest, and you got to slow the elephant, so you can't run away from him. You got to sort of run almost in a direction toward him, so he will be forced to make a sharp turn. So he'll be forced to slow down." So I sort of run, if you will, 45 degrees from him, but in the direction of the forest, on the side of the forest where he came from. And at that particular moment, I think I would have beaten any Bolt Usain, any sprinter. So I charged towards the forest, and behind me, I heard the elephant stepping on the bicycle. So I sort of congratulated myself, because I felt that obviously the direction or the momentum worked, and he had to make a sharp turn. So he did break part of the bicycle. And then I managed to get into the forest, and as soon as I got into the forest, I felt okay. Now I have to start switching direction again, zigzagging, to be able to again keep the elephant moving and reduce his speed. And as I made another sharp turn, all of a sudden I felt a trunk or something grabbing me by the ankle. And I was in there. It's the trunk of the elephant reached for me. I was in there, and I was just flying in there.
Wow.
And at that point, you start thinking again. The mind works very, very quickly. I'm a Canadian and spent some time in the wilderness, and they tell you, you know, if you're attacked by a bear, a grizzly bear, go into fetal position.
But what do you do when it
Don't
comes to
give-
elephants? They don't give you this advice in Canada, unfortunately.
That's right. But you draw on what you have. And so I said, okay, let's see. I'm going to get myself into fetal position to see to give the elephant as little space as possible to hurt me. Um, and I tried that, pulling myself on the side. And the next recollection I have is essentially where I hear the helmet cracking. I hear the force of the elephant foot coming down on my helmet. Which again, interestingly enough, what your mind does. In my case, my mind, you would think it would tell you, okay, this is over, or saying goodbye to whoever, or having your life flash. Instead, I had a very interesting thought. I said, well, this is very interesting. What's going to happen next?
Really?
That's
I mean, just to be clear, that the helmet was still on your head at this moment. It hadn't.
The helmet was
hadn't
on my
fallen
head.
off. So,
You
I mean,
know, I wear it all the time on these trips. It's compulsory for our trips.
yeah.
It saved my life. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what happened. You know, the helmet started cracking. What happens next is either I lost consciousness, or the brain simply deletes, you know, the painful stuff. Because the next conscious thought that I have is I'm now flat on my back, and I see the elephant disappearing from my vision. It's just running back, you know, into the trees. It's just disappearing. So either, as I said, either it was I lost consciousness, or you know, or whatever the brain does, it does. So that's it. At that point, you know, I lay on the ground there, literally flat on my back. And as I said, I remember being on the side, so the elephant obviously did some stuff. I have a feeling at that point, I'm convinced that my back is broken. But I don't know, I just lay there still. And as it happened 2 months before, I took an intensive wilderness rescue course, how to rescue people who are seriously hurt. So I was lying there, and I said, all right, now I have to do this. I have to examine myself to see what works and what doesn't. So there I lay, and then I decided, all right, let's see if I can move my toes. So I moved my toes on my right foot, and that worked. There was no pain. So I said, oh, well, that's good news. Then I moved the other foot, toes, and I said, well, that works. That's good. Then I said, well, let's see if you can lift the knee. So I lifted my right knee, and I lifted my left knee, and that worked. So I said, well, maybe this is not so bad. And at that point, I said, well, can I pull myself into sitting position? But then I very quickly, you know, the one thing they tell you, you do not move a victim. You know, you got to make sure that, you know, because if you move them and has a broken back, a broken neck, of course, you know, it's quadriplegic. So I lay there for 15, 20, half a minute, having this dilemma, but then I panicked. I literally panicked. I said, well, nobody will find me. I have no choice.
Yeah.
I have to move my head. I have no choice. You know, nobody will find me. I'm in the forest. Well, of course, it wasn't true, because the bicycle was out there, you know, but, you know, at that point, so anyway, I decided to lift my head. Not a wise thing, but I did, and there was no pain. And everything was fine. And I said, well, let's see if I can pull myself into a sitting position. At this point, I could, you know, my left side, my left eye was kind of half covered. I could hardly see. This is from the impact of the foot crashing my head in the ground. But anyway, I managed to put myself sort of into a sitting position. But at that point, I realized that my shoulder and my left arm wrist was totally dysfunctional. So I just grabbed my right hand with the shirt, and I just pulled my hand. And at that point, I realized the bone was sticking out completely.
Wow.
My wrist was broken. My shoulder was broken. And so I just sat there. That's when I realized, well, getting up is not a wise idea at this point. So I sat there pulling my thoughts, and I said, well, maybe the person, the young lady, maybe she heard something, maybe she turned around, maybe they're running around. So I yelled her name, and she didn't respond. So I yelled again. She didn't respond. And I said, I come from a very screaming family. My father was like a Shakespearean actor before there were speakers, screamed like hell. So I trained my voice to fight with him, because there was only one way to deal with it, to try to scream harder. So I said to myself, all right, let's do that. My father screamed. Let's scream as hard as I can for the last time to see if she can hear anything. And I did, and to my surprise, she responded sort of right behind the trees from the road, but her voice broke down. So at that point, I very quickly realized that she either knows something or she sees the bicycle being wrangled. So I said to her, Stephanie, stay calm, because if you don't stay calm, you're no help to me. And now I need help right away. So and she responded saying, she responded calmly, and she said, Henry, I'm fine. So I said, there's a phone in my bag there, and I need an ambulance right away. Please call an ambulance. Don't even come here, just call an ambulance. And she said, I have my own phone, and I'm calling right now. She didn't call the ambulance. She called the tour leader who was ahead, one of my staff, who happened to be the person we actually trained on each other on this emergency rescue, wilderness rescue. So she called him, and he immediately called an ambulance to that little town which we passed the day before, and then he commandeered the local. He was actually also passing already through another little town, and he just jumped into a vehicle and said, the guy, turn around, go, just go. Don't ask any question, we have an emergency. And so he commandeered a vehicle, and he was there within minutes, and they took over. And then he started going through all of this, checking on me and checking my pulse and see what was broken or not. And then the ambulance showed up within, I would say, not even half an hour. And I was taken to the local clinic, where they patched my arm in particularly, because I could have bled. Luckily my vein wasn't broken, because I would have been in big trouble. I would have bled to death within minutes.
Yeah.
And from there they took me back to Mysore. They took me to the big city, which was a couple of hours, more than that, a couple of hours of driving. So that's the essence of the story.
And you live to ride another day, is the and that's it. But I suppose, I mean, for all of the kind of public health campaigns about wearing a helmet when you're cycling, very few of them take into account elephant attack, because of course it's not one of the main problems. But I'm presuming you kept this helmet as a memento of this event.
Not only that, I've kept the wheel on which the elephant stepped on. There was a rack as well, but they threw away the rack. They didn't, and that was completely wrangled, which is too bad, because I would have taken it back to Canada.
Sure.
But they did put the wheel back. And if you ever go by my house here in Toronto, and there's a big oak tree. And out of the oak tree, there's a little branch that was just started growing at the time I came. And I took the wheel and I put it right on there. And people always wonder why there's a wrangled wheel. And now, in the meantime, the branch has got thicker, so it's almost impossible to take it down. But it stays there, and people who obviously don't know the story wonder, some real freak lives here. He's putting up wheels, wrangle wheels. So I have that. I have the helmet, and I have it because it's just part of my life. It's 10 years now.
Exactly. And I mean, and you survived. So as horrific and terrifying as this incident was, when you come out of it the other side, and you're thankfully just left with an interesting story to tell people, and a wrecked bicycle wheel and a helmet. There's something to be said for that. Henry, I know you have, I'm sure, plenty more stories from the interesting life you've lived so far and continue to live. If people want to kind of find out more about you or TDA Global Cycling, where's the best place for them to go to do that?
Well, obviously, the easiest thing is to go to the website, tdaglobalcycling.com. That's Tom David Automobile Global Cycling.
We will put a link in the description of the video below so people can find out more about you and, of course, TDA Global Cycling if they want to do that. But yeah, until then, thank you so much for joining us, Henry, and sharing this tale with us.
Pleasure is mine.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So that's all we've got time for this episode. We're going to be back very soon with more tales of adventures from some of the world's most intrepid globetrotters. If you haven't subscribed already, do that to be informed of next episodes as soon as they come out. But until then, goodbye.